What the hell happened to Tage Thompson this year? Plus, the Amerks playoffs and maybe the Leafs ready to blow it up. All coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. Got my coffee here and a brand new hoodie, so we'll see if I can get through the entirety of today's show without spilling any. Thanks for listening, making us your first listen every day. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Week 2 of Lindy Ruff as the Buffalo Sabres head coach. We got some stuff on Ruff this week, including a visit with Trey Matthews of Locked On Devils to get the scoop on what happened in New Jersey. That'll be ahead this week. We'll talk lots of Amerks playoffs as well. They're tied 1-1 in their series, and a lot else to get to. The playoffs in general, and your comments and questions at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres for our Locked On Sabres text line. If you are not already a member, that's where you sign up, that website. Otherwise, you're just texting. Don't have to actually go to the internet. So, lot to get to throughout the week. Today, we will begin our exit interview series going through some of the top players, player by player. Then we'll get some positional groups as well. Look at the bottom 6 in general. Today, we are going to begin with Tage Thompson. Right at the top of the lineup, number 1 center. What happened to Tage Thompson this year? I've got some numbers that point to differences in his 5-on-5 versus power play production and how they can get him back on track. All that is ahead on Tage. But let's start today with the Amerks. Before we start things off with the Amerks, I should remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I'll admit it, I've got a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. The Amerks fall in Game 2 in Rochester after having a 2-0 lead on Sunday. Not a great game to not get to the garage when you led like that. They played really well in the first half of that game. The Crunch had the first 3 shots, and then the Amerks went on a 9-1 shot run from there on. They got the lead with Michael Mersch, their captain, scoring on the power play. Yuri Kulik added an assist on that power play goal. The Amerks were playing well. Devin Levi had made a couple of really nice saves. And then they kind of let it get away from them. Crunch take over the game. They make it 1-0, 2 or 1-1. Or they get it back to tie game 2-2. Take the lead 3-2. There's Mason Yops, though, in the third period to tie the hockey game. A lot of good production and good chances from both the Sabres prospects, but also the veterans on the Amerks. I thought Anton Wahlberg, getting my first real good look at him, 2nd-round pick of the Sabres last draft, really impressive. Big body guy, 2-way guy, thought puck possession was a strength of his, and I just noticed him on almost every shift that he played. This is a take I actually saw elsewhere on Twitter as well that I agreed with. Isaac Rosen is someone where he cannot hit the score sheet like he didn't in this game, and you still notice him. In fact, not only did he not hit the score sheet, he was a -3, but he makes an impact almost every single shift he is out there. Love the game I saw from Isaac Rosen. It's going to have to translate for him into some points, of course, as well. He was the one who kind of gets the movement started on the power play. He plays his offside on the left. Really impressed by Rosen, and obviously Kulik got that assist. Otherwise, I didn't see a ton from Kulik. Levi was strong in this game as well, so not a bad game, but they let the lead get away from them. They lose it in overtime, but as Seth Appert was pretty not happy about in postgame, there was an icing call that shouldn't have been icing, and the officials never got together to talk about it, and they let the icing stand. Syracuse wins the face-off. Boom, it's right in the back of the net. And the Amerks lose the game when it was kind of stemmed from an icing call that shouldn't have gone against them. So That series is tied 1-1. Game 3 will be in Syracuse on Thursday. So best of 5 series. They go back to Syracuse. They're going to have to get one on the road to try to force, at least get one on the road to force a Game 5 back in Rochester, which would be next week. So hopefully they get on a little bit of a deep run here. They're not going to they can't blow leads though like that, and expected to do so. One other playoff thing I wanted to get to before we move on to Tage Thompson. In the NHL, a lot of blowout series. Every series is basically 3-1, except for Washington getting swept already by the Rangers. Not like anybody could have seen that coming. That was an easy one. The Golden Knights are only up 2-1 on Dallas at the moment. They just haven't played Game 4 yet. And then I believe every other series is 3-1. A lot of uncompetitive series. Colorado is just a treat to watch. I mean, they are on another level in terms of watchability and excitement. That is, I think, the most fun team to watch. It may be of my lifetime. They are so fast. Cale Makar, coast-to-coast goals. McKinnon. I just can't get enough of Colorado. The only game they lost the series was 7-6. So I hope they go on a deep run. Casey Middlestat made a really nice pass for an assist on Sunday, where he kind of toe dragged it behind the net, got it out in front for the goal by Arturi Lehkonen. So Middlestat's playing really well, and Colorado is, I think, right now. I picked New York to win the Cup. I picked the Rangers to win the Cup before the playoffs began. Even though they're through already, I think I want to pick Colorado. Right now, if I got the opportunity to change my pick, I think I would bet Colorado, because I just don't know how anybody's going to stop that team if they stay healthy. The playoff thing, though, I really wanted to get to is on the Leafs. The Leafs, here we go every year. It's a tradition unlike any other during the Sabres playoff drought. Sit back and watch the Leafs fail miserably. Is it one small reward that we get for this playoff drought that we've had for 13 years is every year for 9 years now, 9 years, the Leafs have a season like this. And they are staring 1-8. Actually, it's 8 years, sorry. But they are staring 1-8 in playoff series in the face as a core. And there's the video the other night of Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander all getting in each other's faces. Matthews yelling at Marner to shoot the puck. Nylander, I think, to Marner saying, quit your crying, basically. This isn't juniors. And then Marner slamming his gloves on the bench. Matthews disappearing. And I'm sorry, I do not buy the BS that the Leafs are feeding everybody, which is that the doctor pulled Matthews from the game in the second intermission. Listen, it might be true that he's been dealing with a little bit of an illness or some sort of flu, but no best player in the league or on a team gets pulled by a doctor in the second intermission of a playoff series. That does not happen anywhere, unless the guy wants to pull himself off the ice and they need an explanation for it. I will buy any conspiracy theory I see about this, because I don't buy for a second that Matthews got pulled by the doctor after 40 minutes of hockey. Are you telling me if that game was tied and not 3-0, that doctor would have had the gumption to pull him? Something weird happened there, no doubt. And he wasn't at practice this morning. You had before that, Nylander was conspicuously missing from the first 3 games of the series. Weird series by Toronto. They're, I think, going to get rolled here by Boston in short order. Their season's going to end. And it is the number one podcast topic that I have seen. All the national podcasts are talking about it right now. And this is before the series is even over against Boston. Is it time to blow up the Leafs? And that has some really exciting possibilities. I personally am going to wait until they get officially eliminated to throw that around as a topic. But, hey, that could happen as soon as tonight. And then, let's go. Let's start talking Mitch Marner trades. Let's start talking Willie Nylander trades. I don't think you can get Matthews out of there, but I think the Leafs might finally blow it up. It really might finally happen. They are starting to feel it. And I tweeted that above, quote tweeting that video of Matthews, Nylander, Marner all yelling at each other with, this is what 1-8 in playoff series as a core looks like. They have been one of the most failed cores that I've ever seen with a talent level like that. How, with that goal scorer, who is maybe the best goal scorer in the sport and a top 5 player in the NHL, another guy in Marner who is a point-a-game player over top of that every year, 3 90-plus point seasons. It would have been 4 this year if he stayed healthy. And another stud top-line guy in Willie Nylander. And then, John Tavares maybe is a part of why this didn't work. How, though, with those 3 guys, can you go 1-8 in playoff series? Horrible. I'm ready to talk Marner trade. And I have got some ideas already cooking, but we'll save those for a future episode. Because when we come back, what happened to Tage Thompson? Let's break down Tage's season and look ahead what is to come for the guy that's supposed to be the Sabres' number 1 center. It's all ahead here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Just got through talking about the Leafs a little bit. Hey, if you want to bet them to come back in this series, you get a pretty good price right now. It isn't the worst take in the world. I wouldn't bet it though myself, but it's playoff time. NHL, NBA are in the playoffs. You got baseball in full swing as well, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook. This episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is also brought to you by Gametime. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA, NFL tickets. Check out all their amazing features, including, I think, getting the views from your seat are the best feature. Getting a panoramic view, exactly what you're going to be looking at the event, and it's right there in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee on Gametime, they'll credit you 110% of the difference as well, and your ticket is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, it's making us your first listen every day. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports today when you are finished up with us. They've got lots of recapping from the NFL draft. Check it out, Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Tage Thompson, what happened to number 72 this season? We saw a giant regression from Thompson from the 22-23 season to the 23-24 season. In 2022-23, Thompson was voted to the All-Star game. He did not participate due to an injury. He finished 14th in Hart Trophy voting. 14th, not that much to write home about. He got 1 third-place vote and 3 fourth-place votes in the Hart Trophy voting last year. This year, nowhere near the conversation, nowhere near the ballot, not in the discussion, really from beginning to end. Thompson had a very slow start to the year. He came out of the gates with only 1 goal in his first 6 games played and no assists. 1 goal, no assists in his first 6 games. Then he started to heat up a little bit, but at some point during the year, middle portion of the year, Thompson sustained a couple of injuries. A lot of that has been shrouded in darkness, but the little tidbits that we've picked up along the way is that at one point he was dealing with a wrist injury, which would have affected his ability to shoot the puck. And of course, that's the one that he missed time with, was the wrist injury. He was out from November 14th to December 5th And when I remember talking to Don Granato about his return, it was almost a surprise that Tage was coming back because he was supposed to be out longer than he ended up being out, maybe rushed it back, which that's credit to him, that he rushed it back a little bit, trying to get them back in the mix. But was he right? Probably not. My thing with Tage all year was what was going on with the skating. Well, I think part of why his balance looked off and his skating looked off is it sounded like along the way there was a back injury. And that, if you ask me, that made just as much of an impact as his wrist injury did. Sure, the shooting probably went down because of the wrist injury, but the skating looked bad to me all year, and I could fully believe that a back injury was bothering him a lot. But he played 71 games, and you did not get the results that you needed. Started to get a little bit going down the stretch. How the numbers really regressed, how far down he went from last year to this year. Last year, 22-23, 47 goals. This year, 29 goals, an 18-goal drop. Assists goes down from 47 to 27. That's a 20-assist drop. And points, he goes down from 94 points to 56 points, a 38-point drop. That is a 41% drop in Tage Thompson's production, 41% from last year to this year. For comparison, when the stock market crashed in 1929, it only dropped 23%. Thompson saw an incredible regression that even I was not anticipating on that level. I thought we might be due for some regression, but not what we saw. How much of it, though, had to do with injuries? How much of it had to do with the play taking a step back? That's, again, going to be tough to evaluate. But we have some numbers to look at that even go beyond the goals and the assists. What about scoring chances? These are all going to be per 60 minutes of ice time. Per Tage's 60 minutes of ice time. At 5-on-5, because the 5-on-5 and the power play numbers, they're a little different. And I think maybe you can arrive at a different conclusion, where one could be more about injury and the other could be more about the team around him letting him down. Let's start with the 5-on-5. Tage Thompson, his shots per 60. Last year, 11 shots per 60 minutes of ice time. This year, 10.2. Basically the same. He was getting the puck to the net about the same. But the quality of the chance was diminished. Scoring chances per 60 minutes, he went from 12 to 9. And the shooting percentage was almost exactly the same as that. 12.7% last year, 9.8% this year. Those are modest drops. Those are good size drops. 12.7 to 9.8 in the shooting percentage, and the scoring chances going down the way that it did. Some of that could be his teammates regressing also, right? Alex Tuch regressed a little bit, and Jeff Skinner regressed a lot. So that probably hurt him as well. But injury, of course, will play into all of this with Tage Thompson. But we saw a modest drop in the quality of chances that he had, but he still was getting the puck to the net. But I think a lot of that was pressing, was I got to do something here. I got to grip the stick a little tighter. I got to score for this team. And by trying to do that so hard, he's firing pucks from spots he shouldn't be shooting from. There were times where he would shoot from the wall with a hard wrister, and it's like it'd been told, like, you got to simplify your game. I get it on some level, but that's not what made Tage Thompson great last year. What made Tage Thompson great was his ability to get to those elite scoring areas with his stick handling and his speed and his size. And then once he got to the middle of the ice, got to those scoring areas, then he was scoring goals. And trying to score from the edges, it just wasn't working to the same degree for Thompson at 5-on-5. What about on the power play, though? This is where we saw a bigger drop. A bigger drop on the power play than we saw at 5-on-5. We only saw about a 3% drop on his shooting percentage at 5-on-5. Well, what about on the power play? He went down from a 22.6% shooting percentage on the power play to 15.0% this year. That's an insane drop. 7.6% drop from last year to this year. And he was actually shooting the puck on the net more. He went from not 18.2 up to 19.5. But you just had a lot harder time getting it through. So while he got more pucks through, he was attempting way more shots. He went up by 1 shot per 60 on the power play. Shots blocked that he had blocked went from 11.4 to 16.8. Massive step up. Teams were focusing on him more on the power play. Matt Ellis and the Sabres coaching staff did not have a counterpunch to it, and Thompson was getting his shots blocked a lot, and he wasn't scoring on them. I chalk the power play up to coaching. I'll explain, though, when we come back, what needs to change to get Tage Thompson back to the elite number one center that he showed us he could be last year, and why that's important. It is critical to this team's success that Tage improves from where he was last year. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here, talk about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying, flag on the play. We already talked about that, but there is just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you could team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much more to get. Unique stickers. You could trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now. Free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. Final segment here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. It's making us your first listen every day. All right, Tage Thompson, how do we get him back to number one center? Because he's got to be their number one center, especially with what Dylan Cousins showed last year. That guy's not going to step up to be your number one center, I think, anytime soon. It's got to be Tage. How do we get back? 5-on-5. My number one key is something I've talked about a lot on this show already, and it's not that interesting to say, but I kind of just simply think it's him staying healthy. I think if he stays healthy, the numbers will return to the level they were at even strength. But I do think there are deeper problems on the power play. I believe that one of the biggest keys that Kevin Adams needs to accomplish, biggest goals this offseason, is the Sabres need a reliable threat opposite of Thompson on the power play. It is just too easy for teams to focus in on Tage, get in his shooting lane, cover him up, and force someone else on the Sabres power play to beat them. And the answer last year was no one could beat them. Dahlin scored more goals, but not to the degree where you could come off of Thompson. Same goes with Dylan Cousins. Same goes when Kyle Okposo was on there. Even Peterka. Peterka was dominant 5-on-5 last year. He did not have a great season on the power play. And this is a name that has never been my favorite idea, but anyone else thinking the same name when I say the Sabres need a reliable threat opposite of Thompson on the power play? It's Patrick Kane or someone like him. But Patrick Kane opposite Tage, would that free up Tage a little bit to get some room and get some more one-timers off cleanly and then be able to get back to a 40-plus goal scorer? It's not crazy. In fact, I would predict that would help in a big way. Other things I think Tage needs to improve on. He's got to be stronger on the puck. I think a lot of that was his back injury, but you are 6'7", 220 pounds. It should not be as easy to put Thompson, not just off the puck, but put him on the ground as it is. Far too often, opposing teams could take Tage off his skates and put him on the ice. Also, needs to be more willing to take open space with speed, flying through the middle of the ice. There were a lot of times where he would kind of slow up and slow the game down last year, and I hated that for him. I want him moving. I want him going. I want him threatening the defenseman with his speed. It's hard. He would try to dangle guys going half the speed he did last year. And one thing about dangling as a player, as playing hockey, you got to be going in with speed, because if you're going slow, then your defenseman's not as off kilter. He can more easily watch your hips to stay in front of you. Whereas if you're coming in with a head of speed, like suddenly that guy is more focused on how fast you're moving, and then he might lose sight of the puck for a second, and that's when you could burn him. Tage has got to attack defenders more with his speed. That did not happen to a large degree, I thought, during this past year. So those are all things he needs to improve on. It is critical that he does it because, as I just mentioned, who does it if he doesn't? In the NHL, in today's NHL, and really for all times in the NHL, you got to have a top number one center. You got to have a great number one center. It is so painfully hard to be a consistent contender in the NHL if you do not have a great number one center. Look at the teams that are doing well in the playoffs right now. Look at them. Look at the Rangers. I mean, this is not the most elite number one center, but Mika Zibanejad has developed into a great number one center in the league. How about in Florida with Alex Barkov? They've got that guy. How about Colorado with McKinnon? They've got him. Vegas has Eichel. Vancouver has Pettersson. Edmonton has McDavid. I would argue the only team, and this was a team I doubted before the season, and I'm a little surprised by it, but the only team that doesn't have a true number one center that looks like they could be posed for a deep playoff run is Boston. That's it. Every other team that could make a run to the cup has got a great number one center that's better right now than Tage Thompson is, and Thompson's got to get on their level. He's not going to get to the Matthews level. He's not going to get to the McKinnon level or the McDavid level, or Barkov even. I don't even know that's fair for Tage. But can you get me to Elias Pettersson? Can you get me to the level that Sebastian Aho plays? Can you get me to the level that... Who else? What about, Braden Point's a lot to ask, but you know what I mean. A guy like that second tier number one center, that's what they're going to need from Tage Thompson going forward. All right, that's going to do it for us. Next exit interview, we'll talk about Dylan Cousins. We'll start going through them more two at a time as we roll along here. We'll talk some Amerks playoffs this week. Of course, we'll talk with Trey Matthews, Locked On Devils, on Lindy's tenure in New Jersey. And we'll roll along with some of your texts and tweets. We'll have a mailbag edition coming up this week as well. All that ahead. Thanks for listening today to the Locked On Sabres podcast, making us your first listen every day. Now go check on Locked On Sports today. It's available anywhere you get your podcasts, especially on YouTube, streaming 24/7. Check it out. Locked On Sports today, and we'll talk to you next time here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.